Okay, on this next video, I'm going to have to take it as I drive by because there's people all around and I don't want to cause a fracas. There's a guy sitting right in front of the house, and so I think he would take umbrage if I did a whole video pointing the camera at him because it's his house. It's this yellow house on the left as we pass on the corner here with the man sitting out on the front porch. This is 2439 West 5th. It is literally 3 from Ruth Payne. This is Buell Wesley Frazier. And you say, well, who's Buell Wesley Frazier and what's his role in all of this? Well, remember, it was Ruth Payne that got Lee Harvey Oswald the job at the Texas School Book Depository. And in September of '63, Frazier also began work at the Texas School Book Depository in Dallas. And so Ruth Payne obviously knew Buell Wesley Frazier since they lived next door to each other, and told him that Lee was going to work at the same building. He got the job in October, so they got hired 1 month apart. This sort of arranged marriage by Ruth Payne, remember she's his handler, led to a sort of a platonic friendship between Oswald and Frazier. And Frazier had a car and agreed to give Oswald a lift to work when he was staying at Payne's house in Irving. I'm telling you, this is a good little jaunt from downtown Dallas. So it's not a bus ride, it's not a taxi cab. So Buell Wesley Frazier was his ride. Typically what would happen is Oswald would come to, on Friday, to Irving and spend the weekend with his family here at Ruth Payne's house, which means on Friday afternoon he needs a ride from work to here, and on Monday morning he needs a ride from here back to work, and then he lives during the week at his rooming house there on Beckley. So Frazier was his ride. On November 22nd, '63, Frazier gave Oswald a lift to the Texas School Book Depository, and he told the Warren Commission that Oswald took a package to work that day that he claimed contained curtain rods. You know, this whole last-minute meeting, to me, I don't believe in coincidences. First of all, how quickly Ruth Payne, you know, upon meeting the Oswalds, split with her husband and invited Marina to live with her. How quickly she arranged for Oswald to get a job at Texas School Book Depository, and how conveniently she hooked him up with Buell Wesley Frazier, somebody she knew. He didn't know, but somebody she knew. And then Buell Wesley Frazier ends up playing a big part in concocting this curtain rod fantasy story that Oswald had snuck the rifle in this brown paper wrapped package. And this is the story that the Warren Commission wanted to go out. That's why they tried to ruin you know, other people's story that contradicted their narrative. Anyway, Buell Wesley Frazier is the one who told the Warren Commission that on the 21st, which is the day before, that Thursday, he had brought Oswald in, or actually on the 22nd, he had brought him in that morning, and Oswald had that brown paper bag or package with him. And of course, this contradicted or duplicated the story they'd heard from Leon Yates, so they had to get rid of Yates and his story to make way for Buell Wesley Frazier and his story. In his book, The Kennedy Conspiracy, author Anthony Summers points out, quote, ironically, it was Frazier and his sister who created doubt that Oswald had in fact been carrying the murder weapon rather than his curtain rods. Both of them insisted that Oswald's parcel was 8 to 10 inches shorter than the disassembled Mannlicher Carcano. Now, they didn't know it was that, but later when they said what the dimensions were and they compared it to the disassembled Marcano, it was 10 inches shorter. And which is why Frazier was able to demonstrate how Oswald carried these so-called curtain rods, which he claims is probably the gun, cupped in his right palm of his hand up underneath the armpit. That's not possible with the disassembled Mannlicher Carcano. The gun, even disassembled, is too long. And he didn't realize when he was telling that story that he was really creating doubt about his story, because there's no way they're hoping it's the Manicure Carcano, but the way he told the story, it can't be the Manicure Carcano. Frazier even demonstrated to the Warren Commission, Dallas police, exactly what he meant, how he carried the gun. And he demonstrated tucking it up under his armpit, cupping it in his right hand. Jack Daugherty was the witness who saw Oswald enter the Texas School Book Depository on November 22nd, 1963. He told the Warren Commission that Oswald was not carrying anything in his hands when he arrived that morning. So you have Buell Wesley Frazier saying he had a package with what he said were curtain rods, and you have Jack Daugherty, he said, no, I watched him enter the building, he didn't have anything with him. And you have Buell Wesley Frazier saying, he cupped it in his right hand up underneath his armpit, which is impossible when they took the dimensions of the disassembled Manicure Carcano into account. It's too long. And then you already have the other story from the doppelganger from Ralph Leon Yates a couple days prior, another curtain rod story. So this is a story that is being, just like Oswald's name was seeded into the investigation by military intelligence, this curtain rod story has been seeded into the consciousness by the doppelganger. And now here's Buell Wesley Frazier taking off, and he's got his own curtain rod story. And this is supposed to explain to the American public how Lee Harvey Oswald got that Manicure Carcano into the Texas School Book Depository. The gun they allegedly found, which they didn't find. They found a German Mauser, but they switched it after they discovered in Oswald's garage that it was actually a Manicure Carcano, so they had to make a quick switch. I mean, this is unbelievable. This is why, if there was a trial, Lee Harvey Oswald would have walked away. The evidence just falls apart upon any kind of close inspection. A half-competent defense lawyer would just destroy this case. Absolutely destroy it. But of course, they knew there wasn't going to be a trial. So all they got to do is throw it out there and see what sticks. Garland Slack testified to the Warren Commission after claiming that he saw Oswald practicing with a rifle at a firing range on November 10th, that Oswald was driven to the driving range by a man named Frazier from Irving. So Buell Wesley Frazier is, in my book, as complicit in the setting up of Oswald to be the patsy, even coming up with this crazy curtain rod story, as Ruth Payne, as the doppelganger, as all these other people that are seemingly making a career out of setting up Oswald to be the patsy. It has also subsequently been learned that Frazier had a friend whose name was John Crawford, and guess who John Crawford was an associate of? In other words, he was in business with Jack Ruby. So you just see this galaxy of people that always seem to have some semblance of connection to people like Jack Ruby and agencies like the CIA. I mean, Ruth Payne, try to find somebody in her family that didn't work for the CIA. And then Jack Ruby, all these folks, these associates, these folks that are connected to him, they're all seemingly involved in this setting up of Oswald. And this is like a whole galaxy. Oswald's in the middle, he's the target, and all these people circulating around him are orbiting, and they're all playing their part. They're all doing their part. Buell Wesley Frazier pretends to be Oswald's friend, gives him rides back and forth to work, takes him to the shooting range, which was totally a concocted event. And because we know that Oswald could not have been at that shooting range at the time Gordon Slack thought he was there, turns out who Buell Wesley Frazier actually drove out there that day was the doppelganger. So that puts Buell Wesley Frazier in cahoots with the doppelganger. And we know what the doppelganger's job is, to set up Oswald. So I think Buell Wesley Frazier was every bit as involved with setting up Oswald as the doppelganger was. So clearly it's not an accident that Marina ends up out here, all the way out here in Irving to get her away from Lee. And then Ruth, using her connections and her associations, her husband moves out, makes room for Marina, and she immediately, she plays the part of benefactor to the Oswald family. She's taking care of his wife and kids, and so she lets him store some stuff out here, but she gets him a good job at the Texas School Book Depository. And and hooks him up with a good guy who can give him rides back and forth. Oswald, not realizing all along the way that every one of these people are not working in his behalf at all. They're working against him. So these are the two residences out here in Irving. Let's go to George de Mohrenschildt's house next, and that's the original handler of Oswald here in Dallas. Thank you.